The smell of smoke still lingered in the air when the sirens finally faded, swallowed by the chaos of downtown Chicago. The fire had devoured 3 floors of the apartment complex before they managed to contain it, leaving behind a skeleton of scorched brick and shattered lives. Captain Logan Reed stepped out of the smoldering building, her face streaked with soot and sweat, the heavy weight of her gear pressing down on her like the memories she tried so hard to forget. Her hazel eyes scanned the scene. Paramedics rushing, civilians crying, her crew moving like muscle memory in the aftermath. She pulled off her helmet and ran a hand through her damp, dark blonde hair, her jaw clenched tight. Another night, another fire, another reminder that saving lives sometimes meant losing pieces of yourself. She turned as a paramedic waved her over, and that's when she saw her. The woman, the doctor, standing by the emergency van in a fitted navy jacket, stethoscope tucked around her neck, hair tied back in a practical bun that couldn't hide the defiance in her posture. She looked out of place among the soot and ash, too clean, too composed. But her eyes told a different story. Sharp, focused, furious. "Captain Reed," the paramedic said, gesturing toward the woman. "Dr. Elena Torres wants a word." Logan barely nodded, pulling off her gloves as she approached. "Is there a problem, doctor?" Elena's arms were crossed tightly across her chest, her tone clipped. "Yeah, there is. One of your team members let a civilian out through a structurally unstable stairwell. That could have collapsed at any second. I don't care how heroic it sounds in the report. It was reckless." Logan's brows arched slightly, a smirk threatening the corner of her lips. "And yet, it didn't collapse. The civilian's alive. I'd call that a win." Elena took a step closer, fire sparking in her dark brown eyes. "You got lucky. That's not the same as being right." Logan tilted her head, intrigued. She hadn't expected to be challenged tonight, especially not by a doctor who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover instead of a trauma bay. "Funny, I don't remember you being in the building with us." Elena's lips pressed into a line, but her gaze didn't flinch. "I've been working ER for 9 years. I've seen what reckless looks like on a gurney." That hit harder than Logan anticipated. For a second, the weight of too many near misses pressed on her chest, but she pushed it down.
She didn't let people in.
Especially not people who came at her like that, all polished fire and righteous fury. But something about Elena's anger wasn't just professional, it was personal. Before Logan could respond, her radio crackled, pulling her attention. She turned halfway, giving a clipped response, then looked back, but Elena was already walking away, heels clicking against the pavement like a challenge. Logan watched her go, something tightening low in her stomach that had nothing to do with adrenaline. Later that night, Logan sat on the back bumper of the fire engine, sipping burnt coffee from a dented thermos, trying not to think about the doctor with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes. But Elena lingered anyway. Not just the confrontation, but the way she'd stood her ground, the edge in her voice, the way her breath hitched for half a second when Logan stepped close. She wasn't just angry. She was alive. And Logan hadn't felt drawn to someone like that in a long, long time. Across town, Elena stood in the quiet of the hospital break room, scrubbing her hands harder than necessary, her reflection in the mirror staring back like it had something to say. She hated firefighters. No, she hated the way they thought rules didn't apply to them. Her brother had been one. Had gone into a burning house to save a child, just like Logan's crew tonight. Only he hadn't made it out. And no matter how many lives she saved, that wound never really healed. But Logan Reed wasn't her brother. She was something else. Harder, quieter, all muscle and mystery and calm under pressure. Elena didn't want to admit it, but when she looked into those hazel eyes, she hadn't just seen arrogance. She'd seen pain. And it unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. 2 days later, fate, or something just as twisted, brought them face to face again. A pileup on the freeway sent both their teams racing to the scene. Mangled cars, broken bones, and not enough time. Logan pulled a man from a crushed sedan just as Elena rushed over with her team. Their eyes locked across blood and chaos, breathless and bristling with unfinished conversations. "You again," Logan muttered, voice dry. Elena didn't blink. Try not to do anything stupid this time. Logan grinned, teeth white against ash. No promises. They worked side by side without meaning to, tension thrumming in every glance, every brush of movement. When Logan's hand accidentally grazed Elena's arm as she handed off a spinal collar, neither of them pulled away. And for a brief, dangerous second, the world around them fell away, leaving only heat, history, and the slow, undeniable realization that whatever this was between them, it wasn't going away.
Not now.
Not ever. The rain had started just after midnight, soft at first, then heavier, soaking the city in a steady rhythm that made everything feel slower, quieter, except for Elena's thoughts. She sat in her apartment, half a glass of wine untouched on the table, her laptop glowing with unfinished patient charts and emergency reports. But her eyes weren't focused on the screen. They kept drifting back to the memory of Logan's voice, low and teasing, echoing in her head like a melody she didn't want to admit she liked.
Try not to do anything stupid this time.
No promises. It should have irritated her.
It did.
But underneath the annoyance was something warmer, more dangerous, something that left a flutter in her stomach and a heat that had nothing to do with frustration. She hated that. Hated that someone like Logan Reed, reckless, confident, unreadable, had managed to get under her skin. Especially when she built so many walls to make sure no one ever did again. Meanwhile, across town, Logan was at the station, staring at the ceiling of the bunk room, one arm flung over her eyes, her gear still damp from the freeway rescue. The silence was thick, broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling or someone shifting in their bunk. But sleep wouldn't come. Not with the memory of Elena's voice still fresh in her mind, sharp, no nonsense, but laced with something she couldn't quite define. She'd been around plenty of doctors before. Most kept their distance from firefighters, professionally cold, sometimes judgmental. But Elena was different. She challenged her, stood toe-to-toe without flinching, and even in the middle of chaos, there was a fire in her that Logan couldn't ignore. It wasn't just attraction. It was something deeper, something unfamiliar and unsettling, like the start of a storm you couldn't stop. 3 days passed without incident. Enough time for Logan to convince herself it had just been the adrenaline talking. Enough time for Elena to bury herself in work, telling herself she was imagining it. But the universe, or whatever force enjoyed playing games, had other plans. A gas explosion in a downtown bakery sent Logan's team racing to the scene. Flames licked up the sides of the building, smoke billowing thick and fast, and in the middle of it all, bodies pulled from debris, two critical, one unresponsive. Logan moved on instinct, barking orders, pulling her team into formation, diving into the inferno like it was the only thing keeping her alive. When she emerged, carrying a young girl covered in soot, barely conscious, she didn't notice the crowd gathering outside the caution tape. She didn't notice the rain starting again. She only noticed Elena, running toward them in her scrubs, hair down, eyes wide with horror. "We got her," Logan shouted, and her voice caught in her throat as Elena reached them, immediately checking the girl's vitals, her hands steady even as her face showed cracks of something raw and terrified. "She's my niece," Elena said, barely above a whisper. Logan froze. Everything stopped. "You're what?" "Maya," Elena choked out, pressing 2 fingers to the girl's pulse. "My sister's daughter. She was visiting the bakery with a friend." Logan's grip on the girl tightened unconsciously as if her body understood the weight of it before her mind did. She handed her over slowly, their hands brushing, electricity surging between them even in the panic. "She's breathing. I carried her the whole way." Elena looked at her then, really looked, eyes glassy with tears, but something else too. Gratitude.
And fear.
And maybe something that felt dangerously close to trust. "Thank you," she whispered. Logan just nodded, jaw tight, heart hammering. The moment stretched, 2 women caught in the crossfire of disaster and fate, tethered by a child, and a feeling neither of them could name yet. Hours later, After the hospital chaos settled and Maya was declared stable, Elena found Logan sitting outside the ER entrance, drenched, exhausted, still in her gear. She walked over without a word and sat beside her. For a long time they just sat. No flirty remarks, no professional boundaries. Just silence, heavy with things neither knew how to say. Finally, Elena broke it. You saved her. Logan didn't look at her. That's my job. No, Elena said, softer now. What you did, that was more than duty. Logan let out a quiet breath, her voice rough. I couldn't have known she was yours. You didn't have to, Elena said. You still ran back in when no one else would. Logan turned her head then, meeting Elena's gaze, and what she saw there nearly stole her breath. The doctor wasn't angry. She wasn't guarded. She was open. Just for a second. And in that second, Logan saw everything. Grief, strength, vulnerability, and something else blooming quietly, like a spark just beginning to catch. Elena spoke again, barely audible. You scare me. Logan blinked. Why? Because I can't afford to care about someone who throws herself into danger every day. I already lost my brother to it. I don't think I can do that again. Logan leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not him. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you. I know, Elena said, her voice breaking slightly. But it doesn't make it easier. Logan reached out, her fingers brushing Elena's hand. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't loud, but it was real. Solid. A promise, even if they didn't have the words yet. Then maybe, she said slowly, we take it one step at a time. Elena didn't pull away, didn't run, just looked at her, breathing a little deeper, the storm between them shifting. Not gone,
but changed.
And in that quiet, rain-soaked night, something unspoken settled between them. A beginning neither of them expected, but neither of them could deny. The days that followed moved in slow, aching waves. Maya was recovering well, bruised lungs, a fractured wrist, but conscious, smiling, asking for her aunt every morning. Elena's world had been on the edge of collapse, but Logan had pulled it back with her bare hands. That night outside the hospital hadn't left her. The way Logan had touched her hand, so careful, like Elena was something fragile. She hated feeling fragile. But for the first time, she hadn't hated being seen. She hadn't pushed it away. And that scared her more than anything. Logan hadn't reached out after that. Not a text, not a call. Not that Elena had expected her to. They were from different worlds, and whatever had sparked between them, brief as it was, had happened in the middle of fire and blood and panic. Maybe it didn't mean anything. Maybe it had just been adrenaline. But when Elena passed the fire station on her way to the hospital the following Friday, she found herself slowing down, eyes flicking toward the open garage, half hoping to catch a glimpse of that familiar figure. And there she was. Logan, in a gray tank top, towel around her neck, laughing with one of her crew. Her hair was damp, her skin still flushed from a workout, and she looked human. Real. Almost too real. Elena felt something pull in her chest. Before she could think, she pulled into the nearest spot, got out of the car, and walked straight into territory she swore she'd never step into again. Logan spotted her instantly. Her expression shifted from casual to surprised to unreadable in seconds. Dr. Torres, she said, voice even, almost guarded. You lost. Elena crossed her arms, standing just outside the open bay, the heat from inside brushing over her skin.
No.
I was just in the neighborhood. Right, Logan said, arching an eyebrow. Totally normal to drop by a fire station in your scrubs on your day off. Elena sighed, half smiling despite herself. Okay, maybe I wanted to talk. Logan wiped her hands on the towel, tossing it aside. She walked over slowly, stopping just a breath away, her eyes locked on Elena's face like she was trying to read something buried deep. I've been thinking about you, she said, without flinching. Elena's heart skipped. I wasn't sure if I'd ever see you again, she admitted. I wasn't sure if I should. Because it's messy? Logan asked. Because it's dangerous, Elena said. Not just the job. You. Logan tilted her head. You think I'm dangerous? I think you make me feel things I've spent a long time trying not to. Logan didn't respond at first. Her gaze dropped to Elena's mouth, then back to her eyes, and there was a tension there, thick and magnetic. You think I don't get that, she said, voice low. You think I haven't lost people? That I haven't looked at someone and thought, God, I wish I hadn't met you because now I don't know how to stop needing you. Elena's breath caught. She hadn't expected honesty. She hadn't expected the wall around Logan to crack this easily. But it had. And now they were both standing in the ruins, unsure what to do with the truth laid bare. Then what do we do with this? Elena asked softer now. Logan didn't answer. She just stepped forward, slow, careful, and raised a hand to Elena's cheek, brushing a damp strand of hair behind her ear. Her fingers lingered.
Warm.
Grounding. We stop pretending it doesn't exist, she said. And then she kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was deliberate, deep, the kind of kiss that spoke without words. Elena didn't resist.
She didn't think.
She just melted into it, one hand finding Logan's hip, the other sliding into the back of her neck. It was heat and comfort, and a quiet kind of desperation they'd both been ignoring for too long. When they pulled apart, neither of them moved for a long moment. Logan's forehead rested against Elena's, and her voice was barely audible when she spoke. I don't do relationships. Neither do I, Elena whispered. Good, Logan replied. Then we can both fail at this together. Elena laughed quietly, and Logan's chest rose and fell like she hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. They exchanged numbers finally and agreed to dinner. Not a date, just food. Just two women figuring out what the hell this was. But when Elena left, Logan stood in the bay for a long time, staring after her. She knew herself. She knew how she kept people at arm's length, how her world didn't leave space for softness or permanence. But Elena had carved out a space anyway, without asking, and Logan wasn't sure she could push her out of it. That night, Elena stared at her phone more times than she could count. Her stomach twisted in that teenage way she hated, full of nerves and excitement. And when Logan's name finally lit up her screen with a simple message, still on for tomorrow? Her heart gave in to something she'd been trying to deny since the first time they met. She replied without hesitation. Yes, absolutely. Across the city, Logan lay on her bunk, staring at the message like it was some kind of miracle. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about fire. She was thinking about Elena Torres. And how one dinner might not be enough. Elena stood in front of her closet longer than she'd care to admit, a half-empty glass of white wine in one hand and 3 rejected tops thrown across the bed behind her. It wasn't a date. She kept repeating that to herself. Just dinner. Just 2 adults sharing a meal and pretending the heat between them hadn't nearly boiled over in the middle of a fire station. And yet here she was, worrying if her blouse was too casual, if her jeans were too tight, if she looked like she was trying too hard, or worse, not trying enough. The nerves surprised her. She wasn't the type to second-guess herself. At the hospital, she made life-or-death decisions on instinct. In surgery, her hands never trembled. But Logan Reed had the power to unravel her with a single look, and that terrified her more than anything. She finally settled on something simple: black jeans, a tucked-in silk shirt the color of deep wine, a fitted jacket over it. Clean lines. Strong. And maybe just a little sexy if you looked closely. She told herself she didn't care if Logan noticed. She was lying. When the knock came at 7:31, she opened the door and felt her breath catch. Logan stood there in dark jeans, a charcoal button-down rolled up at the sleeves, her hair a little tousled, her smile quiet but devastating. You look, Logan started, then paused, eyes sweeping over her slowly. Incredible. Elena arched an eyebrow, fighting a smirk. Not bad yourself. Ready? Logan asked, and for a second, Something unspoken hung between them, like both were waiting for the other to name what this really was. But neither did. Instead, Elena grabbed her bag and locked the door behind her, following Logan down the hallway like it didn't feel monumental. The restaurant was tucked into a quiet corner of the West Loop, all soft lighting and dark wood, warm jazz drifting through the air.
It was intimate without trying to be.
Logan had chosen it, and Elena couldn't help but wonder what that meant. They were seated in a booth near the back.
Close.
Private. Elena ordered a Pinot Noir. Logan asked for bourbon. They didn't talk about work. For the first half hour, they kept it light. Music, books, favorite meals, travel. But the longer they talked, the more the air between them shifted. It wasn't casual. Not really. Not when Logan leaned in a little too close every time she laughed. Not when Elena's knee brushed against hers and didn't move away. Not when the silence between their sentences started to pulse with everything they weren't saying. So, Elena said finally, swirling her wine, "Do you always make a habit of kissing women you barely know in the middle of your station?" Logan smirked. "Only the ones who argue with me in front of my crew and then show up 3 days later pretending they weren't thinking about it too." Touché. Elena tilted her head, studying her. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone cockier, louder, someone who hides behind the uniform." Logan's smile faded slightly. "I've done my hiding. Doesn't really work." "And now?" Elena asked softly. "Now I just do what I have to." "Even when it scares you?" "Especially then." They stared at each other for a beat too long. The clink of a glass somewhere in the restaurant, a soft laugh from another table. It all faded behind the way Logan's eyes locked on hers like she was trying to memorize the shape of them. Elena swallowed, her voice quieter now. "I didn't come here tonight because I was curious. I came because I haven't stopped thinking about you."
And I hate that.
Logan's throat moved as she swallowed, her fingers tightening around her glass.
Why?
"Because it's not simple. Because I don't do this." "Not since," she trailed off. Logan reached across the table, her hand grazing Elena's. "Not a full touch. Just contact. A spark." "Me neither." The silence stretched, but it wasn't awkward.
It was charged.
Heavy with restraint. When they left the restaurant, the city was quiet, the wind soft and cool against their skin. Logan walked her to the car. They stood there, both pretending this was just a polite goodbye. It wasn't. "So," Logan said, voice low, "what now?" Elena looked up at her, eyes searching. "Now I either kiss you and regret it, or I don't kiss you and regret it." Logan's breath hitched. "What do you want to regret more?" Elena didn't answer. She stepped closer instead. Their mouths met in a rush of hunger and hesitation, a collision of everything they'd been holding back. Logan's hands found her waist, pulling her in like she'd been waiting to do it all night. Elena's fingers tangled in Logan's shirt, gripping tight, grounding herself in the reality of this moment, this woman, this feeling that scared the hell out of her. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Logan leaned her forehead against Elena's. "I don't want to mess this up," she whispered. "Then don't," Elena murmured. "Just don't disappear." "I won't," Logan said, voice like a promise. "Not unless you run first." "I'm trying not to," Elena admitted. "I really am." "Then we'll figure it out." Logan kissed her again. Slower this time. More sure. When they finally said goodnight, Elena sat in her car for several minutes, fingers still tingling, lips swollen, heart pounding like she'd just survived a fire of her own. And maybe she had. Meanwhile, Logan walked into the station with a look no one dared question. She climbed to the roof, sat on the edge with the city lights stretching out in front of her, and let herself feel it. Hope. Quiet, dangerous, real. The kind of hope that made her wonder what a future might look like if she let herself believe in one. And somewhere, beneath all the doubts and fears, a simple truth began to take root. Whatever this was between them, it wasn't going away. Not tonight. Not ever. It had been 4 days since the dinner. 4 days since that kiss in the parking lot, since Elena had felt Logan's hands grip her waist like she was the only solid thing in a world full of shifting debris. For days since Logan had stood there, forehead pressed to hers, whispering truths that Elena wasn't ready to hear, but couldn't ignore. And now, they were in each other's orbit more than either had planned. Texts at odd hours. A shared coffee in the hospital cafeteria. A late-night phone call that lasted an hour longer than it should have. There was a rhythm forming, soft and steady, like two people learning how to breathe the same air after years of holding it in. And yet, beneath the quiet connection, something restless stirred. Desire that was no longer subtle. Want that pulsed in every glance. And fear, sharp and cold, hiding in the shadows, waiting for one of them to flinch. It came to a head on a Thursday night. Elena had just finished a double shift, her body aching, her patience worn thin. She walked out of the hospital, hair tied back messily, stethoscope still slung around her neck, and found Logan leaning against her truck like some goddamn movie scene. Arms crossed, boots scuffed, that unreadable expression on her face. Elena slowed her steps. "What are you doing here?" Logan straightened. "I was nearby. Thought you could use a ride. Or company." Elena raised an eyebrow. "You don't strike me as the spontaneous type." Logan smirked. "You'd be surprised what I'm willing to do for the right person." That pulled a breath from Elena's lungs she didn't know she was holding. She hesitated, then nodded toward her car. "Follow me." "Always," Logan said, and her voice was so low and certain that it sent a shiver down Elena's spine. 20 minutes later, they were in Elena's apartment. Shoes kicked off, jackets discarded. The air between them thick with something unspoken and growing heavier by the second. Logan stood in the middle of the living room, hands in her pockets, watching Elena with that calm intensity that always made her feel naked even when she was fully clothed. "This isn't just physical, is it?" Elena asked suddenly, her voice sharper than she intended. Logan didn't move. "Do you want it to be?" "I don't know what I want," Elena admitted. "But I know I can't handle another person walking away because things get hard." Logan's eyes darkened. "I'm not walking away." "Everyone says that," Elena whispered. "Until the fire gets too close." Logan took a slow step forward. Then another. And another. Until she was right in front of her. "Elena, you are the fire." And with that, she kissed her. Harder this time. Deeper. No restraint, no slow burn, just hunger and heat and all the things they'd been pretending to hold back. Elena's hands flew to Logan's shirt, gripping the fabric, pulling her closer. Logan's mouth moved against hers with a desperation that tasted like need, like longing, like a woman who'd spent too long pretending she didn't care. They stumbled together, mouths never parting, hands everywhere, hips, backs, tangled hair, and trembling fingers. When they finally broke apart, gasping, Logan pressed her forehead to Elena's. "Tell me to stop." "Don't you dare," Elena breathed. They didn't make it to the bedroom. The couch caught them in a crash of limbs and whispers, shirts peeled away, skin against skin. It wasn't perfect. It was rushed, messy, loud. But it was real.
God, it was real.
And for the first time in what felt like forever, Elena let herself feel everything. All of it. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Logan's head resting against Elena's bare shoulder, fingers tracing soft patterns across her stomach. The silence was no longer tense. It was heavy with contentment, with something deeper blooming quietly in the dark. "That was," Logan started, but Elena cut her off with a quiet laugh.
"Yeah."
Logan smiled against her skin. "You always this intense?" "Only with people I want to keep," Elena whispered before she could stop herself. Logan didn't answer right away, just shifted closer, her arm wrapping around Elena's waist. "Then keep me," she said simply, "for as long as you want me." And something in Elena's chest cracked open, soft and raw and terrifying, but also beautiful. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting gold across bare skin and messy sheets. Logan was already awake, watching Elena sleep like she didn't quite believe she was real. When Elena stirred, Eyes blinking open slowly, Logan leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You okay?" she asked. Elena nodded, voice husky.
Yeah.
"Just wondering what the hell we're doing." Logan smiled.
Falling.
Slowly. "And if we crash, then we crash together." It wasn't a promise. Not really. But it was close. And for now, it was enough. Later, as Logan got dressed, pulling her shirt over the bruises Elena had kissed the night before, she hesitated. "I'm working the overnight tonight. Big training burn. I might not be able to text." Elena sat up in bed, sheets slipping down her body like silk. "It's okay. I'll be here." Logan paused. "Yeah."
Yeah.
One word, but it meant everything. Because for the first time, neither of them was running. Not from each other. Not from the fire. They were stepping into it. Together. The days that followed moved too fast and far too slow at the same time. Between shifts and emergencies, Elena and Logan fell into a strange rhythm. One built on glances that lingered, messages sent at 3 a.m., and fleeting touches that said more than words ever could. It wasn't defined, not exactly. They hadn't labeled what they were doing, hadn't dared to speak the word relationship out loud. But it was something. Something real. Something fragile. And it terrified Elena more than she let on. She told herself she was fine. She'd spent years building walls, so high no one even tried to climb them anymore. But Logan had appeared like lightning, sudden, blinding, impossible to ignore. And now she was there, woven into Elena's every thought, every breath. The fear didn't come from Logan. It came from how much she already meant. One night, after a particularly brutal shift in the ER, Elena found herself pacing her kitchen with a glass of wine she hadn't touched, staring at her phone like it might explode. Logan hadn't texted. She knew there was a night training burn scheduled, but still, no word, no message. "No, I'm alive." And that silence, that not knowing, dug under her skin like splinters. She told herself she wasn't the kind of woman who waited by the phone. But here she was, waiting, wondering, wanting. At 12:43 a.m., the message finally came. Still alive. Exhausted. Going to shower and crash. Miss you. Elena exhaled so sharply it almost hurt. She typed back fast. Glad you're safe. Call me tomorrow. And threw the phone on the couch like touching it any longer might set her on fire. The next day, they met at a small cafe on Logan's day off. She looked tired, bruised under the eyes, voice raspier than usual. But her smile when she saw Elena was soft and real. They sat in a quiet corner, sunlight slanting through the window between them. "You okay?" Logan asked, her thumb brushing across the back of Elena's hand. Elena hesitated. "You didn't text. I mean, you did. Eventually. But I didn't know if you were, hey." Logan's voice was gentle, but firm. "I'm here. You don't have to wonder about that." Elena nodded, her throat tight. "I don't like not knowing if you're breathing." "Then you're not alone," Logan said, her hand curling around Elena's. "Every time a trauma code hits the ER, I worry I'll see your face come through the doors." That stopped Elena cold. The honesty in it. The weight. "We're both in dangerous jobs," Logan added. "But I think the real danger's right here." She tapped the table between them. Letting someone in. Letting them matter. Elena swallowed hard. "You matter." The words slipped out before she could catch them. Logan blinked, stunned silent for half a second. Then she nodded slowly. "You do too." They didn't kiss in the cafe. But when Elena dropped Logan off at her place, they stood by the car longer than necessary, bodies close, breathing the same air. Logan reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind Elena's ear. "Come in," she asked, voice low, uncertain. Elena shook her head, not because she didn't want to, but because she knew if she stepped into Logan's apartment tonight, she wouldn't leave until morning, and that terrified her in ways she couldn't yet name. "Not tonight." Logan nodded, understanding flashing across her face. "Soon." Elena leaned in, brushing her lips lightly across Logan's. "Very." But not everything stayed perfect for long. A few days later, Elena was at the hospital when she heard one of the nurses chatting loudly near the nurses' station. You should have seen her. Logan Reed. That woman's a literal superhero. Pulled 2 kids out of a fire, then flirted with the new EMT like it was just another Tuesday. Elena froze. The new EMT? She asked, trying to sound casual. The nurse grinned. Yeah, the one with the dreads.
Sierra.
You haven't met her? Total knockout. Apparently she and Logan used to date back when Sierra was stationed in Oak Park. Elena smiled tightly and walked away. But inside, something twisted. She hated the feeling. Hated the burn of jealousy clawing at her ribs. It was stupid. She wasn't Logan's girlfriend. They hadn't defined anything. But the thought of someone else having had her, of someone else still having access to those pieces of Logan, made something sharp and possessive rise in her chest. That night, Logan showed up at her apartment without warning. Rough shift, she asked when Elena opened the door. Elena stepped aside to let her in, but didn't answer. Logan noticed immediately. Okay, what happened? Do you still talk to her? Elena asked without preamble. Logan frowned.
Who? Sierra.
The new EMT. The room went still. Logan exhaled slowly. We dated. A long time ago. It ended before I transferred to Chicago. We're not in touch. But you flirted with her. Logan's brows lifted.
Who told you that?
Does it matter? Yeah, Logan said, her voice suddenly sharper. Because I need to know if we're having a conversation or if you're just lashing out because you're scared. That stung. Elena crossed her arms. You didn't deny it. Logan stepped closer. I didn't flirt with her. I made a dumb joke. That's it. But let's get something straight right now. I don't want anyone else. I want you. The words hit hard. Elena swallowed, trying to hold her walls steady. But they were already crumbling. I'm not used to this, she said quietly. Feeling things this fast. This deep. Logan cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Neither am I. But here we are. And when they kissed this time, it wasn't about heat or hunger, it was about grounding. About connection. About reminding each other that even when the doubts crept in, even when the fire got too close, they were still standing in the same flame. Together. The silence that followed the kiss wasn't awkward. It was full of words unspoken, of apologies neither of them needed to voice. Logan's hands stayed on Elena's waist even after their mouths parted, grounding them in something they were both still learning to trust. Elena's forehead pressed against Logan's shoulder, her breath warm against her skin. The apartment was dimly lit, quiet except for the low hum of the city outside the windows. And for a moment, neither of them moved. You want to stay? Elena asked softly, the question more vulnerable than she meant it to be. Logan didn't hesitate. Only if you want me to. Elena pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. I want you to. That night, Logan stayed, not just in Elena's bed, but in her space, her rhythm, her silence. They didn't rush into each other like before. This time was slower, deeper, filled with long glances and hesitant touches that gradually became more certain. Logan's fingers traced the curve of Elena's hip beneath the sheets as if memorizing it, her mouth worshipping every inch of skin with quiet reverence. And Elena, who had always been composed, always in control, let herself fall apart under Logan's touch. Let herself be seen, be held, be wanted. Afterwards, wrapped in each other's arms, Elena whispered into the darkness, "This scares the hell out of me." Logan kissed her temple. Me too. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the bedroom, but neither of them moved for a long while. Logan's fingers lazily traced circles on Elena's bare back, and for once, there was no urgency, no outside noise demanding their attention.
It was just them.
Can I ask you something? Elena murmured, eyes still closed. Of course. What made you become a firefighter? Logan paused. Then, quietly, my dad. He was 1. Died when I was 12. House fire. He went back in for someone. Didn't come out. Elena's eyes opened. Logan, it's okay, she said. It took me a long time to stop being angry about it.
But now?
I think I became a firefighter because I needed to understand why he chose that. Why someone would risk everything for a stranger. Elena turned in her arms, hand sliding to Logan's cheek. And do you? Logan nodded.
Yeah.
I do. Every time I save someone, it makes the loss mean something. Like it wasn't all for nothing. Elena's heart ached in her chest, not from pain, but from the weight of understanding. She kissed her softly, slowly, and whispered, "You save more than lives, Logan." Logan didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her mouth found Elena's again, deeper this time, like she was trying to say everything she couldn't speak. But the world didn't stop for anyone, not even for women who were slowly falling for each other. That afternoon, Logan was called into the station early for a downtown building collapse. Elena returned to the hospital, and before she could even change into her scrubs, 3 trauma cases came flying through the ER. It was chaos again. Their worlds, always moving, always unpredictable. By the time midnight hit, Elena's feet throbbed, her mind swirled, but all she could think about was Logan. She stepped outside for a breath of air, the city lights shimmering in the distance, her phone in her hand, thumb hovering over Logan's name. She hadn't heard from her all day. She tried to be patient, tried to be understanding, but the fear was there. It always was. She finally gave in and typed, "Still alive?" There was no response for 12 minutes. Then barely, "Want to come see for yourself?" Elena's lips curved despite the exhaustion. She replied, "On my way." When she arrived at the station, the place was mostly quiet. The crew was asleep or winding down. Logan was in the locker room, still in her gear, her jacket unzipped, hair damp with sweat and dust. Elena walked in without knocking. Logan looked up, surprised, then instantly softened. "Hey." "Hey," Elena said, crossing the room. "You look like hell." "I feel worse." "Want me to take you home?" Logan shook her head. "I have to stay in case we get called out again." "Then I'll stay here." Logan blinked. "You sure? You have a couch, don't you?" Logan reached out, pulled her close by the wrist, and buried her face in Elena's neck. "You smell like lavender." "You smell like smoke," Elena replied, pressing her lips to Logan's temple. "I like it." They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other in the dim light. Eventually, they curled up together on the old couch in the break room, and it didn't matter that it was too small or that they barely slept. It was enough. The next morning, when the crew found them tangled together, no one said a word. But the looks were knowing, teasing, and maybe even a little approving. Logan didn't care. For once, she let herself be seen. Let herself want. Let herself be wanted back. Later that week, they had their first real fight. It started with something stupid. Elena working a double and forgetting to reply to Logan's texts. Logan showing up unannounced at the hospital with food, only to find Elena in a heated conversation with a male colleague in the hallway. She didn't mean to be jealous. She wasn't the jealous type. But when Elena brushed past her with a distracted smile and said, "Give me 10," without explanation, something inside Logan snapped. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just shut down. And Elena noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked once she finally joined her in the break room. Logan shrugged. "Just tired." Elena sat beside her. "No, you're mad." "Tell me." Logan exhaled slowly. I waited outside for 45 minutes. And you didn't even look surprised to see me." Elena blinked. "I didn't know you were coming." "I know. That's on me. But seeing you with him," Elena stiffened. "You think I'm sleeping with him?" "No," Logan said quickly. "It's not that. It's just, he knows parts of your life I don't. You talk to him differently. You laugh with him. He's gay, Logan." Logan looked up. "Oh. And also married." Logan winced. "Okay, I feel like an idiot now." Elena softened. "Don't. Just talk to me next time." "I can't read your mind. I don't want to guess when something's wrong." Logan nodded. "I've never done this before. Not like this." Elena took her hand. "Me neither. But I want to figure it out. With you. Logan leaned in, her lips brushing Elena's with the softest sigh. Then we will. And they did. Slowly. Imperfectly. But together. And every time one of them faltered, the other reached out, steadying them with touch, with words, with love that neither dared to call love just yet, but both felt in their bones. The shift in their dynamic wasn't sudden. It crept in slowly, threading itself between late-night texts, the way Logan's hand lingered on Elena's back when they walked side by side, the way Elena started leaving an extra toothbrush by the sink without saying a word. There was no label. No "are we official" conversation. Just presence. Constant and steady. But even without the words, everything between them was changing. It became clear one night when Elena came home from a brutal trauma rotation. She was quiet, slower than usual, eyes heavy with something deeper than exhaustion. Logan was already there, stretched out on Elena's couch in sweatpants and a tank top, flipping through a crime documentary she wasn't really watching. When she saw Elena walk in, she muted the TV immediately. Rough night. Elena dropped her bag and jacket to the floor, didn't even bother to answer. She walked straight over, crawled into Logan's lap, and buried her face in her neck. Logan's arms closed around her instinctively. No questions. No pressure. Just silence and warmth. Minutes passed like that. Then Elena finally whispered, for codes. We lost 3. Logan didn't say it would be okay. Didn't lie to her. She just pressed a kiss to her temple and held her tighter. I couldn't even cry, Elena added. I just kept going. Like a machine. You're not a machine, Logan murmured. You're the most human person I've ever met. Elena pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Sometimes I think I have to shut it all down just to survive. If I let myself feel it all, I won't be able to move. Logan nodded slowly. I know that feeling. You bury it until it rots inside you. And then one day it explodes. Has that happened to you? Elena asked. Twice, Logan said, voice quiet. Once when my dad died. And once when I almost lost a kid in a fire. He looked just like my nephew. I saw his face and couldn't breathe. I had to step outside. My captain almost suspended me. Elena reached up and cupped Logan's jaw, her thumb brushing the edge of her lips. You always seem so calm. That's the trick, Logan replied, smiling faintly. We learn how to carry chaos without showing it. But it doesn't mean we're okay. Elena kissed her then, slow and deep and full of gratitude. You're the only person who makes it feel okay not to be okay. Logan pulled her close again. Good. Because I don't want you to pretend with me. That night, they didn't make love like they had before. It wasn't fast or wild. It was slow, exploratory, emotional. Logan undressed her piece by piece, eyes never leaving hers, fingers trailing across skin like poetry. Elena's body responded to her like it belonged to her, soft sighs filling the space between kisses and murmured words. When they finally lay tangled together, slick with sweat and breathless from release, Elena turned on her side, resting her hand on Logan's chest. If this keeps going, she said, I'm going to fall in love with you. Logan's heart stuttered under her touch. You say that like it's a warning. It is, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Because I don't know how to do that and survive it. Logan rolled to face her fully, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Then don't fall. Just lean. I'll catch you. Elena's eyes shimmered with something she didn't want to name yet, but she nodded. Okay. The next morning, Logan was gone before sunrise. A call came in, chemical fire at an industrial plant on the south side. Elena woke to a note on her pillow. Be safe today. And lean whenever you need to. She carried it in her pocket the entire day. Hours later, Logan returned to the station with a limp, a bandaged arm, and bruises blooming beneath her shirt. She downplayed it to her crew, but the moment Elena saw her walk into the hospital during a follow-up check, she felt the ground slip from beneath her. What the hell happened? Elena demanded, eyes wide, voice sharper than she meant. Logan gave her a tired smile. Fell through a weak section of roof. Caught myself before it got bad. Your file says second-degree burns, Elena snapped. How is that not bad? Logan's smile faded. It's part of the job. You keep saying that, Elena said, her voice cracking. But what happens when the job takes you away from me? Logan's breath hitched. You've never said that before. Said what? That I belong to you. That I'm yours. Elena didn't answer. She looked away, blinking fast. I didn't mean, yes you did, Logan said, stepping closer. And I needed to hear it. Elena turned back, tears brimming in her eyes. This is getting too real. Good, Logan said, her own voice shaking now. Because I'm not here for almost. I'm here for all of it. Even the ugly parts? Especially those. And when Elena finally broke, when the tears fell, and she let Logan hold her in the middle of the hallway, ignoring the stares and whispers, it felt like something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't falling anymore. She was already gone. That night, they lay in bed, Logan's arm in a sling, Elena curled carefully against her, heart pounding too hard to ignore. I've never let anyone in like this, Elena confessed. Then we're even, Logan murmured. Because you broke through every wall I didn't even know I still had. Are we together? Elena asked. Logan smiled, sleepy and sincere. We've been together since the moment you yelled at me outside that building. Elena laughed softly, resting her head over Logan's heart. I'm scared. Me too, Logan said. But I think that means we're doing it right. They didn't say the words yet. Not out loud. But they didn't have to. They were in every touch, every glance, every time one reached for the other, like they were the only thing keeping them anchored. Love had arrived quietly, without permission, and neither of them could pretend it hadn't taken root. Not anymore. The days slipped into each other like silk, quiet mornings filled with shared coffee, whispered goodbyes in doorways, stolen kisses in hospital hallways, and late-night phone calls when shifts kept them apart. Neither Elena nor Logan said the word love aloud, but it lived in every inch of space between them. It lived in Logan bringing Elena soup when she was too exhausted to cook. It lived in Elena showing up at the station on her one day off just to see Logan's face for 5 minutes between calls. It lived in the silence, in the way they breathed a little easier when the other was near. But the more real it became, the more vulnerable it felt. And vulnerability had never been a safe space for either of them. Logan found herself staring at Elena sometimes, watching the way she moved, the way she spoke, memorizing everything like she was afraid it would vanish. She'd lost before. Her father. Her brother's best friend in a fire. Her own sense of stability. And now she'd found something she didn't want to lose. Someone who looked at her not as a firefighter, not as a symbol, but as a woman worth staying for. It terrified her. Elena wasn't any calmer. She caught herself checking her phone too often, waiting for Logan's name to light up the screen. She'd built a life around control, certainty, logic, and Logan was none of those things. She was instinct and heat and risk. But she was also loyalty, kindness, and the safest place Elena had ever known. They were teetering on the edge of something permanent, both of them aware that they'd already gone too far to turn back. And then, as it always does when happiness starts to feel real, everything threatened to collapse. It was a Thursday morning when the first call came in.
Gas leak.
Industrial building. For workers trapped. Logan kissed Elena on the forehead before she left the apartment, whispered something soft that made Elena smile in her sleep, and disappeared into the day without knowing it might change everything. At 11:42 a.m., the first reports of the explosion hit the news. Elena was mid-surgery when a nurse stepped in, pale, holding a phone. Dr. Torres, you need to see this. She watched the footage with her hands still in gloves, blood on her scrubs. The building had gone up in a ball of fire, and one of the firefighters had been inside when it happened. The name hadn't been released, but the station number had. And it was Logan's. Time stopped. Elena scrubbed out in record time, ripped off her gown, and ran through the hospital corridors like she was bleeding herself. No one had answers. The fire was still active. The crew hadn't returned. For 2 hours, she lived in hell, replaying every conversation, Every moment, every kiss. She thought about the night they made love slowly, how Logan whispered against her skin, "I don't want to lose you." Elena had thought she was being dramatic. Now she realized it was a warning. At 2:07 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered on the first ring. "Elena?" Logan's voice was rough, low, alive.
Alive.
Elena let out a sob that surprised even herself. "Where the hell are you?" "Outside St. Catherine's. They brought me here for burns and oxygen. I'm fine. Just banged up." "You're not fine," Elena snapped, already grabbing her coat. "I'm coming." When she burst into the ER, Logan was sitting on a gurney, one arm bandaged, a line in the other. Her face was streaked with soot, hair singed at the ends, eyes exhausted but bright the second they found Elena. Elena didn't care who was watching. She rushed forward, grabbed Logan's face in both hands, and kissed her like she was anchoring herself back to earth. "Don't ever do that to me again," she whispered against her lips. "Don't ever make me wonder if I'll never see you again." Logan held her tight, arms trembling. "I'm sorry. I tried to get out. The roof collapsed. I was pinned for a few minutes." "A few minutes?" Elena's voice cracked. "I aged 10 years waiting to hear if you were breathing." "I'm here," Logan whispered. "I'm here." Later, after the adrenaline had faded and Logan was discharged with strict instructions to rest, they lay curled together on Elena's couch. Logan's head rested on Elena's chest, her bandaged arm draped over her stomach. For a while, neither spoke. Then Elena broke the silence. "I thought I lost you, and I realized something." Logan lifted her head slowly, her gaze locked onto Elena's.
"What?"
"I don't want to live in a world where I can't say it, where I hold it in out of fear, because I can't afford to lose you without you knowing." Logan sat up fully, heart pounding. "Say it." Elena's eyes didn't waver. "I love you, Logan Reed." The words dropped into the space between them like a match on dry leaves. Immediate. Consuming. Logan didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Then she cupped Elena's face and said, "I love you too." The dam broke. They kissed like it was the first time, like it was the last, like they were finally home. Every inch of distance between them vanished, replaced by heat, by tears, by promises wrapped in breathless moans. That night, they didn't sleep. They made love again and again, not out of lust, but out of relief. Out of a need to feel alive, to feel each other, to carve the words they'd spoken into skin and memory. And when dawn crept through the window and Logan lay tangled in the sheets, her fingers laced with Elena's, she whispered, "I want all of it. The hard parts, the scary parts, the forever parts. I want it with you." Elena kissed her knuckles, her heart full, her voice steady. "Then you have it." The fire had nearly taken everything. But what survived was stronger than fear, stronger than silence. It was love, raw, real, and impossible to deny. 3 months passed, and the city moved through spring like it was exhaling after a long-held breath. The cold faded, the days stretched longer, and the fire between Elena and Logan didn't dim. It deepened. What started as tension and temptation had turned into something stable, rooted, alive. They still had their differences. Logan was still impulsive, quick to jump into danger, still quiet when she was hurting. Elena was still guarded with her emotions, still carried the weight of every patient she couldn't save like a ghost on her shoulders. But now, they had each other to lean on, to hold on to bring each other back from the edge when the world got too loud. Logan moved into Elena's apartment in stages, first with just a toothbrush and a pair of socks, then a drawer, then a uniform hanging in the closet. They didn't talk about it. It just happened. And when Logan officially handed in her change of address form, Elena had stared at it for a full minute before whispering, "I guess this is real." Logan had kissed her forehead and said, "It was real the moment you told me to come inside and not leave." Their love wasn't perfect. It wasn't always pretty, but it was honest.
Fierce.
Untamed. And most of all, it was home. One evening, they were at the firehouse rooftop, curled under a blanket, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Logan had just come off a 48-hour shift. Elena had brought Thai food and 2 bottles of cider. They sat in silence for a while, Elena's head resting on Logan's shoulder. "Remember the first time we stood up here?" Elena murmured. Logan smirked. "You mean when I was trying not to text you at 2 a.m. and you showed up anyway?" "I didn't show up. I was in the neighborhood." "You were absolutely not in the neighborhood," Logan said, laughing softly. "You tracked my location. You're lucky I did." "I'm lucky for a lot of things," Logan said, turning to look at her. "Mostly for you." Elena felt her chest tighten in that dangerous, beautiful way it always did when Logan looked at her like that. Like she saw everything and didn't run. "You're getting sentimental," Elena teased. "Must be the sleep deprivation. Or maybe I just realized something." Elena sat up a little. "What?" Logan reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black box. "That I want to keep doing this.
With you.
For as long as you'll have me." Elena froze. Her eyes dropped to the box. "Logan, before you panic," Logan said quickly, "it's not a ring. Not yet. It's a key. To the house I just put an offer on. Our house. If you want it." Elena stared at her, lips parted, heart hammering. "You bought a house?" "I found one. Close to the station. With a big kitchen. 2 bedrooms.
Backyard.
Room for a dog.
Or 2.
Maybe a kid one day if we get bored." "You've been thinking about all that?" Logan nodded. "I've been thinking about everything that makes me want to stay. And it's all you." Elena didn't speak for a long moment. Then she took the box, opened it, and stared at the small silver key inside. "Can I see it?" Logan grinned. "Already scheduled a second visit. Tomorrow. Just us." The next day, the house was even better than Logan had described. White siding, black shutters, a wraparound porch. Warm wooden floors, sunlight pouring through the windows. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect. Elena walked through the rooms in silence, imagining quiet mornings, dinners on the porch, laughter echoing off the walls. She turned to Logan in the kitchen. "I want this." Logan looked like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Yeah. They didn't move in right away. There were logistics, work schedules, furniture to fight over. But the moment they signed the papers together, it felt official. Real in a way nothing else ever had. They painted the bedroom walls together. Logan covered in splashes of blue, Elena mock-scolding her between stolen kisses. They built a bookshelf that collapsed twice before finally standing. They danced in the living room to no music, wrapped in each other's arms, smiling like idiots. Love didn't feel like a storm anymore. It felt like peace. That didn't mean it got easy. Logan had a close call on a 2-alarm fire that left her with bruised ribs and a concussion. Elena cried for hours afterward, holding her so tightly Logan could barely breathe. Elena lost a young patient one night, and Logan sat on the bathroom floor with her while she broke into sobs, whispering, "I'm here," over and over again until she could breathe. They fought sometimes. About who forgot to get groceries, about who was more stubborn, about whether Logan should go into therapy for the trauma she kept swallowing down. But every fight ended with touch, with forgiveness, with a promise that they wouldn't walk away. Then, one quiet morning in July, Elena woke up early, sunlight warm across the bed, Logan's arm draped over her waist. She stared at her sleeping face for a long time and realized she was done running. She leaned in, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "Marry me." Logan blinked, groggy. "What?" "You heard me." Logan stared at her. "You're asking me?" Elena nodded. "I don't have a ring. Or a plan. I just know I don't want to spend another second pretending I'm not already yours." Logan smiled so wide it lit up her whole face. "God, yes. Yes." And then they were laughing, kissing, tangled in sheets and sunlight, and joy so big it barely fit in their chest. A year later, they stood barefoot in their backyard, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Elena wore a satin slip dress, simple and elegant. Logan wore a dark suit, her hair loose, her smile unstoppable. They exchanged vows under a canopy of fairy lights, hearts in their throats, hands trembling as they made promises they already lived every day. "You pulled me from a fire," Elena said, voice shaking. "But it wasn't the one in that building. It was the one I carried inside me. And you've been putting me back together ever since." "I thought I understood bravery," Logan said. "Then I met you. And now I know it's waking up every day and choosing love, even when it's terrifying. Especially when it is." When they kissed, the crowd cheered. But all they heard was each other. Later, at home, barefoot and tipsy on champagne, Logan pulled Elena into the kitchen and whispered, "So, when do we get that dog?" Elena smiled, pulled her closer, and said, "How about 2?" They danced there, just the two of them, wrapped in the kind of love neither of them had dared to believe in once, but now couldn't imagine living without. Fire and medicine, risk and reason, flesh and flame. Against all odds, they had found each other. And this time, neither of them was ever letting go. Thank you so much for your support, whether it's by liking, commenting, sharing, or sending your super thanks. You make all the difference here on the channel. See you in the next video.